So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Marden. I'm a speech pathologist working for AssistiveWare. I designed a couple of revisions of the vocabulary that Proloquo2Go uses, and we're very, very excited to be able to support this series in any way. It's extremely exciting effort that the Angelman Syndrome Foundation is putting on, and we're just really glad to be here. We, as in me and the cats, they're here somewhere in the background. So here's what we're going to cover today, or what I'm going to try and cover. This is the introduction. We're in that right now. And then I understand that a lot of the folks who are following the webinar already have Proloquo2Go, and they already have a user that isn't necessarily a core word user. And so there's a lot of concern over how do we switch over to a core word user. So I'm going to walk you through that process. We'll make a new user. We'll get acquainted with where things are in the latest version of Proloquo2Go, and then we'll take a look at copying things from your old user to your new user, and something about the personalization process of your new user, so that it will work. It will have the vocabulary that the person you're working with needs to have access to. There's a couple of other sections that I may or may not get to depending on how much I go on and on. There are some ways that you can customize Proloquo2Go for physical access and for visual access. We also do have some pre-recorded webinars that there are links to in the resources slides that you've got as your handout. And so those are covered there, but I may touch on some of it that's applicable to people with, especially with CBI today. And then there's some ideas we have for customizing to better support literacy. So it will depend on how fast I talk and how many questions seem to be lined up, because I do want to leave time for that. And I just wanted to show you quickly this slide. This is in your handout, and so if I'm talking too fast or I skip something that or if you want more details or I skip something that you really wanted to know, you can go to our e-learning videos, and I've just listed 6 of them there that are probably helpful and will cover a lot of the same things I'm covering here with a bit more detail. And then the next 2 bit.ly links are to our Proloquo2Go family and professionals Facebook groups. All are welcome on both groups, and people are extremely supportive. So if you would like to join those groups, you'll be more than welcome. And then the very last link, the bit.ly how find words, is a much longer PDF that describes the organizational philosophy behind our Fringe folder. So it kind of goes beyond the core page to where can you find those very specific nouns and verbs. Sometimes that's helpful, since we don't have a search feature, to kind of know the philosophy behind things, so that you can it will be easier for you to find some of the words you may be looking for. And we are working on a search feature in the future. I would say pretty much 150% of our users have asked us for this, and so we kind of think we should have it. So this is a quick overview of what you would need to do if you already have a Proloquo2Go user and you want to take advantage of the latest version of Proloquo2Go and the latest version of our core vocabulary. That's called Crescendo. So we'll walk through each of these steps, but except for the first step, which is back up your current user. Backing up is extremely important, and we have several videos, detailed videos that will that you can look at. Come on, go over there. On this in this e-learning videos page. And to back up your user on a regular basis and get it off of your iPad in case someone, God forbid, deletes the app along with all the backups that are inside of it, it will save you a lot of grief in the long run. So then the next thing you do is make sure that you have updated Proloquo2Go. The currently released version is 4.2, but if you have 4.1.1 or later, you should be okay. And then the latest iOS version, the version of your iPad software, that latest version is 9.1. But if you have iOS 8.2 or later, you should be okay. Then we're going to create a Crescendo user. We'll choose the Crescendo vocabulary, and then we'll choose a vocabulary level called Intermediate Core, and we'll make 6 by 10 grid size or larger, so that will have enough core words for you to use. We'll walk you through copying customizations from your original user into your new user. There'll probably be pictures of family and things like that that you definitely want to have. And then we'll look at some other ways to personalize vocabulary, and then back up your new user and keep it safe. And that is all for the slideshow. Now we are going to switch over to Proloquo2Go, which is here. And what you're seeing in front of you is Proloquo2Go 4. It's not the core user that we've been recommending that you use. Crescendo is a vocabulary with 3 different vocabulary levels inside it. So I go to Options, which is this little gear thing here, and Vocabulary. You'll see one of my choices is Vocabulary Level, and I've got 3 different levels here. Basic Communication, that's like the basic communication vocabulary that you could select in Proloquo2Go 3 and Proloquo2Go 2, is really optimized for, think of it like PECs in a way. You can request, you can make some really basic comments, you can say some pre-programmed phrases, but it really stops there. It really does not help you develop full language. And there are many times I regret that we even have this on Proloquo2Go, because people can get here and get stuck. One of the reasons that Crescendo has 3 different vocabulary levels is that at least if you start with basic, all you need to do to get to one of the core levels is just switch the vocabulary level, and now you're on core. This is not perhaps the world's most useful core at 18 buttons, but it is a core vocabulary. So what I'm going to do I'm going to show you how to make a new user, and we're going to use Intermediate Core, and then we'll copy things over from this old user, which I'll put back to basic. Okay, so to make a new user, you go to Options, and you select User, and you select Add User, and then you name the user. I'm going to name the user Emily for no apparent reason. Except I have a niece named Emily. I tap the next. Proloquo2Go 4.1 and later supports English and Spanish, and you can also have a bilingual vocabulary where you have both English and Spanish in the same vocabulary, and you can switch back and forth at will. I won't go into the Spanish any more than that. We do have a webinar on our website that will go into a lot of detail about bilingual. So we have 4 different, well actually we have 3 different versions of English. One customized for Australia, the UK, and the United States, and if you select India, you actually get the UK. I'm going to pick the United States, and if you're Canadian, probably you would pick the United States as well. Here's where you choose your voice. You may have already seen this page. I'm going to choose Ella because I really like her. The app comes with Ryan and Tracy already installed. Any of these voices here you can download for free when you have Wi-Fi access. So I'm just going to pick Ella. And one thing I should note, you didn't hear Ella when I tapped her, but in real life you would. What I'm doing to share the screen in this webinar works nicely, except that you can't hear the iPad at the webinar end. The iPad is talking, and I apologize that you're not going to be able to hear it, but it is talking. So on this page, what you're going to need to do is choose what vocabulary you want to base your new user on. By default, Crescendo here is selected, and that's what you should continue to select. The other option is empty, which lives up to its name. There's really not a whole lot in it, and you would have to build everything from scratch. So I'm going to pick crescendo. Here I'm going to pick the vocabulary level. We talked a bit about basic communication. There are 2 levels of core vocabulary. You can use either one. Either one, it will be possible for you to follow this communication series. I would strongly recommend that you pick intermediate because it does, I think, a lot better job of making sure that you don't have to dive into a lot of fairly abstract categories to get at your verbs and your adjectives. Some of the more frequently used verbs and adjectives are arranged so you can reach them a lot more easily in intermediate. So I definitely recommend you use intermediate. Advanced is just you've got to navigate a little bit more, so it's probably not appropriate for a lot of people, actually. So I'm going to go next. Intermediate is fine. Oops, sorry. Now what I get to do is choose the grid size. And I can preview this. I can see here's the 3x5, here's the 3x6 that we saw earlier. We have from 3x3 all the way to 144 buttons on the page. 144 buttons are very small. There's a lot of core language there, but that is probably not the place to start. What we're recommending for folks following this series is you pick either 6x10. It's probably a nice sweet spot. It's got some really good core vocabulary, and the buttons are not too small. 7x11 is also another really good option, but I'm going to show you 6x10 today. After you make your user, you can change the grid size at any point. So you can make a decision now, and then you can switch later. And I'll show you how to do that. Now I'm going to do next. This particular section really is only applicable if you're copying settings from a user that has some really, really particular settings to do with physical access. So default is selected here, and I would say 99.9% of you would just choose default. And there you go. You can find out a little bit more about the support we've got by following these links. You can read the manual by tapping this link, or you can just go to new user, and through the magic of the little twirly thing, you have the new user. So here we have our 6x10. It's not really quite 60 words of core because we have a number of folders down here. The folders are where the Fringe vocabulary is located, those much more specific words. And then all of the buttons that don't have a little folder tab on them will say something when you tap them, unless you're connected by QuickTime to the screen, in which case they don't say anything. So I can say I want that. I can say a fair number of sentences just off of this screen. And one of the reasons for that is that we do follow the research for core word to decide what buttons to put on this main screen. And one of the resources that we used was the Dynamic Moving Maps core word. So we don't follow it exactly, but you will be able to find a lot of the core words that you'll be modeling during this program on this page. So on this first page. So I'm going to show you where you can find all of the first 40 DLM words. And I know that Erin will be going over this as she introduces the words for 4 words at a time, set at a time. So you don't need to take notes or anything. It will all be covered. There's one secret trick I'm going to show you about the 40th word that will make it a little easier for you. So the first 4 words are I, like, not, and want. And you can find them all right on the main page. The second 4 words are help, it, more, and different, and again, those are all available right here on the page. Third set, who. And now this is the first time you have to leave the main page to find she and he. You're going to go to the people page, and he and she are right here. And I can go back to the home page this way. If I had, now I'm going to show you how to change the grid size. I'm going to go to the options and then appearance and default grid size. And if I picked 7 by 11, I would have had he and she right here on the main page. So that's something to think about if you're trying to decide whether to go up a size. But I'll switch back to 60 for now. Okay, so he and she, get those in people, and then you is on the main page. The next set, which is what you guys are working on right now, is where, up, on, and in. So those are all available on the main page. The next set that you'll start working on next week is the first time that we're going to see the grammar support options in Proloquo2Go. These are new in Proloquo2Go 4. We added the ability to conjugate pronouns. So any of these buttons where you see the filled in corner, the upper right, if you touch and hold on the button, you'll get conjugations for that word. So for I don't have to program all the different forms of the first person pronoun. I get them all here in this little pop-up when I touch and hold on the pronoun. I have a preview function, so if I tap the preview button, it winks a bit and it becomes green, the outline becomes green. And then, and you can't hear this sadly, but if I tap any one of these buttons, it speaks the button and it puts that button in this little green, what we call the buffer button. And so I can listen, and if I know by ear, if I know by sound what I want, I'm looking for me, then I can find it that way, and I just tap the buffer, and then it goes into the message window. You'll get that for verbs as well, so I will actually show you the next word is make. And if I tap and hold make, Proloquo2Go will give me some of the impersonal forms of the verb, the infinitive, the root of the verb, the participles. If I want to pick what person I want to use, I can pick, for instance, the third person. Then I can come here and I will get all of the third person forms. I can tap the not, and I get the negations along with contractions. I can go and get tons of past tense, present tense, and future tense conjugations. I can preview to try and figure out which one I want. And so I can actually do a lot with the verbs automatically. As I'm sure is passing through some of your minds, that's a whole lot of stuff there, a lot of conjugations. So what you can do if you want is you come in to options, go back up to the top level and find grammar. You can turn off grammar altogether. You can leave it on, and you can go into each of the word kinds and turn off individual tenses. So you can simplify that grammar pop-up a great deal. You can't directly modify it, but you can simplify it. And we are looking in future releases at further changes that we can make to address some of the concerns that people have had about specific ways that the verb pop-ups are set up. We want to make them a little bit friendlier and give people a little bit more options there. But we don't, I can't make any announcements now. We haven't quite decided exactly what we'll do. So that's make, get, and then the next word is look, and it is not on this main page. See is on the main page. So this will be our first look at the actions folder. So if I tap actions, in intermediate core, what I'm going to see is I'm going to see these buttons around the top and the sides. A lot of them are going to stay the same. So these are core words that are very useful when you're using verbs. In English, things like off and in and out and up and on, those are often words that we use with verbs. And the other of these pink buttons, these are verbs that are frequently enough used that on the really big grid sizes, they actually occur on the home page. So this is kind of like where verbs go when they don't fit anymore on the home page, when there aren't enough buttons on the home page. So you would always come to action words and you will find a lot of the frequently used words that you're looking for, including look. It's right there. And then if you go into, if you tap more to go into the secondary page of this verbs page, you'll find some categories of verbs, and you'll also find some alphabetized verbs. And you'll notice that there's a describing folder, and describing does the same, describing word does the same thing that for adjectives that actions does for verbs. We have the most frequently used adjectives here. You can tap this more button and you can get categories of adjectives that have even more adjectives, and there's an A to Z of adjectives. So we were on the 5th set. Now for the 6th set, we've got what, need, and are is the next one. You'll notice we've got is here. If I touch and hold, I can find are. If I select the U, oops, I preview on are. So that's how you would get the are. The next set is some, put, here's all, and this. Then we have don't. On the main page, you can say do not, and you can get don't by tapping this little words folder. Little words is a folder that takes some of the little words, prepositions, conjunctions, some of the auxiliary verbs, the articles here. These are words that will appear on the home page as the number of buttons gets higher and higher. But like with the verbs and the adjectives, when the buttons, when there are fewer buttons available on the home page, we store these away in the little words folder so you can reach them quickly. But there's no room for them right on that first level. So I'm going to pick don't there, and don't that. There's a go, and do. The next set, the first word is when, and as with don't, it's not available on the home page, but if you tap questions, you'll see that it's there, along with some useful questions and some useful words to start questions. The forms of do that you start questions with are here. We have all done. We do not have finished. So I cannot help you with finished. But we make a note of the fact that maybe I should put finished there as an option. If you're Australian, or if you choose the Australian, it is finished and not all done. That's a long story behind that. Can, and here are the next ones for that 9th set and the very last set. For the very last set, we have stop, which is right here, and then we have open and turn, which you can get on the actions page. Open is here and turn is there. And then the very last bonus trick I want to offer you is how to find the very last word, which is over. I go to the second level of the home page. That's what that more takes me to. And I go to where, And here we've got over and under. Over and under do appear on the home page, but much later in the size. You have to get, I think, 8 by 12 or 8 by 14. And so here's what I was thinking for the Angelman webinars, or yeah, the Angelman communication series, and maybe in general, is let's move this where up to the main level of the home page. You get a lot of useful words in where, and my candidate for moving to the secondary is this activities button. We want to be focusing on not on pages that are just useful for one activity, but on pages that are useful for learning core words that you can use in any activity. And so I think for this purpose, it makes sense to kind of move that activities folder aside. So I'm going to take you in a little bit of a tour of the edit mode by tapping the pencil. I'm going to tap activities, and I'm going to move it to secondary. I tap this 2 here. So if I tap this 2 here to go to the secondary, I'll see that there is activities. It's right here. I'm going to tap the where button. I'm going to move it to primary by tapping this 1. Move activities in here just because I don't like leaving gaps. Go back to 1, and there's where right here. So now I can tap this, and I have access to over and under, next to, around, near and far, through, behind, off, and down, which I think are very useful. And I don't have to go to this secondary level to get them. So that's your bonus tip. Okay, so that of course took longer than I thought it would, but that's life. And in the process, I've shown you some of the key Fringe pages where you'll find words that are not on the home page that you'll still find very useful. I'm going to show you a few more of these. Let's take a look at Places. Places has some, my best guess at what are places that you might want to refer to. And if you go to the secondary page, you'll find some more places and then categories. So you can, for instance, find all of your park needs met here in the outdoor places. Okay. And food, similarly, here's kind of cached some popular foods. Categories are here in secondary. Fun with the balloon. Here are some activities that some people find enjoyable. The person that you're working with will obviously have their own personal preferences. And then here are some categories here you can draw some things from. And then chat has this is where you would put your pre-programmed phrases, social phrases, things that you have to get out really quickly and you don't want to have to construct a whole sentence. Let's see. And then help, obviously, is where you would put your pre-programmed sentences if you have specific medical needs that you need to have met. Okay, we talked about the inflections. I'm just looking at my notes here. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to fulfill my promise and tell you how to copy things between those 2 users that you might have. So if you had Proloquo2Go before 4.0, before Crescendo came out, that was April of 2015, then what you will find when you update to Proloquo2Go 4 is what you should find is your old user should be in place. You shouldn't really notice any difference except for these filled-in corners for the inflections. And if you do notice any problems, please, please, please do let us know. We did have some problems earlier in the 4.0 release with people updating from 3 to 4 on older devices like iPad 2s, and they did have some damage to their vocabularies. We were able to work around this in most cases. If people had backups, they were just fine. But of course it caused a lot of anxiety, and if you didn't have a backup, you lost some work. So this is yet another plea, do backups. So I have my old user and I want to switch to my old user. Let's say I've made a old user is my original Proloquo2Go 3 users, let's say. Emily is my new Proloquo2Go 4 Crescendo user, so I'm going to switch back to my old Proloquo2Go 3 user. And I happen to know that in people, I have some buttons that I've customized that I know I'm really going to need in Proloquo2Go in my new user. So I can tap the pencil. I can select them all actually if I want to, because I want all of these buttons, these yellow buttons with the photos in them. You'll notice these buttons here that have a green T on them. I can't select them. They're template buttons, and they were set up so that any folder that was made with this template would have the exact same buttons in the same place. This is to give people consistent access to certain words and phrases. They don't have to search for a particular word or phrase they want to say if it's present in more than one folder. So I've selected all of my buttons. I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to get out of Edit and go back, switch back to Emily, and I'm going to go to Emily's people, and these are family, so I'm going to, well, they're family, but on the other hand, I really want them in this first level because I talk about them all the time, so I don't want to hide them away in family. So I'm just going to go to Edit, paste, and there they are, and the size is automatically the right size for this larger grid size. I can, if I want to, I'll just show you how to do this. I can go to old user, and one of the things that we have done in Proloquo2Go 4 is we've added the ability to copy a folder one level deep. So for instance, I'll go into About Me, and you'll notice that in About Me, there are no subfolders. Oh wait, I lie like a rug. There's one there. But in this first level, there are no subfolders. So I can, in Proloquo2Go 4, I can go to the home page. Let's say I have a lot of personalization I've done in About Me, and I don't want to copy all the individual buttons. I want to get the whole folder. I can tap on About Me, and I can copy it. Oops, I just pasted my family into the home page. I don't want to do that. Bye, family. I can select About Me, and I can copy it. And it says one button is copied, but it has actually copied the folder. And I am going to go to Emily. And it occurs to me, because there is an About Me folder here in chat, what's going to happen if I copy this folder is, if I paste this folder, it's not quite what I think will happen. Let me see. Yep. Yeah, what happened was I have About Me already, and so it actually just copied a link to this original, to this folder in the new user. So let's try something a little different. This is why you shouldn't think on your feet, Jennifer. Old user. Okay, I'm going to take About Me. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to go to folder. I'm going to change its name to About Me Old. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to copy it again. I am going to switch to Emily. And I'm going to paste. And I believe now this is going to be the right folder, although it's hard to tell. Okay, this is why I should not be spontaneous and go off the reservation. I made that other user, the old user, based on Proloquo2Go 4, and so I may have messed up my example a bit here. It's kind of hard to see how to do the right thing when copying folders. But I can tell you that we do cover this in detail in one of the videos that you'll find on our e-learning videos. It's the one transitioning from Proloquo2Go 3 to Proloquo2Go 4. So I just wanted to let you know you can copy folders. As you can see, there may be a little bit of subtlety involved. Definitely copying buttons is very, very safe between users. Okay, so you have, let's say that you have magically copied all of the buttons and you have watched the other video so that you know the right thing to do with copying folders, and you are now at the point where you want to customize this new vocabulary, taking a look at the new words that you have available to you in the new vocabulary. So there's one thing I wanted to let you know about how to do that. Obviously, there's a couple of things. Obviously, there's some folders that you will definitely want to customize. So, for instance, if you go into chat, the famous About Me that we now have 3 of, you're going to want to customize all of these buttons, or they won't make any sense. My name is only appropriate if your name is. And you'll want to customize the people to have the people that person loves and wants to talk about. You can put people here in this top level. You can put them in family, friends, and teachers if you would like. You can also go to this secondary level, and there's a number of other categories that you can use. And then you want to customize places. Here you have some common places on the top level, and in the second level you have, again, some categories you can use. And since I keep talking about this first level and top level, I want to show you quickly how to customize using this idea of the fact that folders have different levels. And I always like to do this by customizing breakfast, because I like food. So I'm going to go to food, and obviously here we have some, this is where you would put your very favorite foods. And then here's where you have specific meals and smaller categories. I'm going to go to lunch, and these foods are the foods that I, as a middle-aged American speech pathologist who's very white, thought people should want to have for lunch. I am 99.9% sure I'm wrong for the particular person you're working with. So here is how you can fix that. This is this first level is where you can put the foods that the person really, really, really wants to talk about, wants to ask for and describe, and really, really loves for lunch. If you tap this More button, you get to the secondary level. This is where you put foods that the person may occasionally want to talk about, but they're not necessarily their very best favorites. And given that there's a lot of buttons here, you might want to take the opportunity to not have every single thing they might want to talk about on one page so that they can find things a little more easily. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I can switch between this first level, the second level, and a third level called storage using this tool up here in the upper right. Storage is where you'll find all sorts of lunch-related foods that didn't make it to primary or secondary because they were just so really, really specific, like pierogi here. Well, what if you love pierogies more than life itself? You should be able to have that on primary, as well as serrano ham and meatball sub. Those are things that that I really like. So I'm going to move these to primary. This should look familiar. This is how we got the Where folder up on the home page. I'm going to go to primary. I can see there they are. I personally think bologna and American cheese are an abomination and they should not exist. The same with fish sticks. I'm going to move them to storage and I don't have to deal with them. I sometimes like grilled cheese and mac and cheese, but not always, so I'll put those in secondary. And let's look at secondary. Don't like fast food or cottage cheese or baked beans or gyros, so those go to storage. Yogurt, I love it. It goes to primary. And bratwurst, for some reason, I love bratwurst, so there it is. So what you can do is you can go through these various folders with the person, with your child or son or daughter, or with the student you're working with, and they can help you do this kind of sorting of things I love, things that are they're okay, and things that I just don't want to have anything to do with. And rather than having to rely on someone who knows the person telling you this information about what foods the people like, you can go to storage and you can look through these foods, talk about them, and the person can have much more of a sense of ownership for what's in his or her whole folders, because he or she really helped set them up without having to, but just by using a set of pictures that's already there. So we do recommend that you go through folders as a way of kind of learning the vocabulary, learning what's possible, and that this is a way that you can customize with working with the person who's actually going to be the owner of the system. It's going to be their voice. So it looks like I have blabbed on for a lot of time, and so I'm just checking my notes here, what I wanted to say. Let's see. I wanted to tell you a few things about customizing the appearance of the pages for folks who have CVI, since I know that that is an issue for some people who have Angelman syndrome who are in this program. Proloquo2Go has 23 different grid sizes for our crescendo, intermediate core, and advanced core vocabulary. So that can go a fairly long way to customizing both for physical access and for visual access, depending on the need. So I can come in to options and appearance and go to grid size. If I wanted to, I could have, say, 32 buttons. You would have to dig down farther to get to those DLM top 40, but you can find them. You can find additional actions here, and additional describing words here. You can go find some additional little words here, and a lot of these are ones that are in the DLM. So every word that you can find on the 6x10, you can find on a page with larger buttons. However, you have to navigate more. And for some people, navigating is the part that's hard, not hitting buttons of a particular size. It's a very individual decision, but what we oftentimes find is people can access buttons that are a lot smaller than you might initially think, and they can learn. They can develop and improve their fine motor skills in the process of using a system with relatively small buttons. So we would recommend that you stick with something like 6x10, but you do have the option of changing that grid size pretty flexibly. The other thing that you can do is if you find that the person needs more visual contrast between the buttons and the background, you can really heighten that contrast in a number of different ways. So I can go, again, into appearance, and first of all, I'm going to go to this section called View and go into Advanced Options, and I can change the background color. I can change the background color to black, which is a lot of contrast, or say something like gray 2 or gray 3 or gray 1, which is not quite so stark. I'll pick gray too, but does give you more punch. I can also, if it's helpful to really emphasize the border colors in order to figure out where to look on the screen. I can come here to this section about buttons and advanced options and border width, and I can make the border very thick so that it's a lot more clear where these areas of different word kinds are located. I'll just make those thick. And then the other thing I can do to heighten the visual contrast if I want to is I can color code the background color as well as the border by parts of speech. So if I come here into background color for buttons, and I have a couple of different options. Obviously, I can color the background of all of the buttons a particular color if I wanted to, but it's probably more useful to color code the buttons. And right now, by default, you can see that what's selected is Fringe only. That means if I go to a Fringe folder, like for instance Actions, you'll see that the buttons that are in the Fringe folder, these new verbs, have a slight pink tint to their background. You'll also see that these buttons here, which are the buttons that are in the same place as they are on the home page, those buttons have a white background. And this is done so that it visually makes it stand out which buttons have changed, which are the new buttons when I've changed folders, and which are the buttons that are stable. They've stayed the same. They were in the same place in the home page. They're in the same place now. I can either select, so here I am in Appearance, Buttons, Background Color. Right now, by default, only the Fringe buttons are getting this kind of shaded background treatment. If I tap all of the buttons are going to get that treatment. So it will be up to you to decide whether this is just generally useful to have these large blocks of color that are easier to visually locate, or whether it is more useful to have those core words still have a white background so that you can more easily see that they're stable in the same place. I'll put it back to the default, which is Fringe. You can turn it off altogether to that effect if you want. The other thing that you can do with the background color coding is you can go to color intensity, and by default that's set to bleached, so it's just a very, very light shade. I can make it a bit darker. That's light, pale, and then all the way to bright. And that is pretty bright, and you actually can't even see the borders because the whole button is that same color. It will depend on your user's visual needs, whether this is helpful or not. If the background is solidly colored in, it's a little bit harder to distinguish the details in the symbols. And so I tend to like to leave it at bleached or at best at light, but we do have those other options available. And then the last visual thing I wanted to show you is also a physical access feature. So if I come back to Appearance and go into this View area here in Advanced Options, I have something called Button Spacing. By default, that's very compact. That means that the buttons are almost touching each other, and so that means that the buttons are as large as they can be. They're taking up most of the space on the screen. If I select Compact, you see the buttons are a little smaller, but I can see more of that contrasting background. There's Medium, there's Loose, and then there's Very Loose. So you might be working with a person who has good fine motor control and relatively good vision, but they really need this kind of dead space in between the buttons where you can touch and nothing will happen. Medium, that might be useful for someone who really needs much more of a visual demarcation between the button and the background. And I think this even looks better with black. So you're seeing very, very clear-cut edges there. So those are some things that you can change in Proloquo2Go if you're working with someone who has a diagnosis of cortical vision impairment, and that can be rather helpful. And let's see, we have 4 minutes left. Ooh. I think it is probably a good time to ask about questions. And I do want to remind you that those videos are already there. You have the link to our support videos, and they do cover this topic that I was just talking about in detail, the transitioning from an older user to a new user in detail. And there's a video on physical access. We have an access method called select on release, where you can drag your finger across the screen and lift it up to make a selection, or you can set the amount of time that you hold a button to be longer than just a brief touch. That can help if you're working with someone who has some sort of a tremor. And then we also have a video that on certain ways that you can set up Proloquo2Go so that it's that it better supports literacy and learning. So I would definitely recommend looking at those videos when you have a chance. And I'm going to ask if there are any questions.
We do have one question right now.
Okay.
If anyone else has any other questions, go ahead, type them in or raise your hand. I do just want to say one thing, though, Jennifer, about the handout. Of course, there's never a webinar that I'm involved in that I don't have some type of technical snafu. So for some reason, I couldn't. Caroline Musselwhite likes to do a little chant right before our webinars to make sure all of our technology works, and she wasn't with us today, so we didn't do it.
So we're doomed.
But for some reason, it wouldn't let me upload the handout, so I just want to let everyone know that's on today. I will email that handout to you, but it's also posted on our website too. So if for some reason you don't receive it in your email, go ahead to our website, and it's under additional resources. It'll be the link for today's webinar, and then also the handout is there.
Right. And so you can post it on Facebook too.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Really nothing exciting. It's just links to these videos I keep talking about.
Great, perfect. Okay, so our one question that we have right now is from Kathy, who is clearly in Canada and would like to know if you will be adding French anytime.
Absolutely, we'll be adding French. We actually are actively working on it right now.